Hello, friends and comrades. How's everybody doing? What's up, Doug Jaffray? Balls out for workers' power? Absolutely. Hello, Ian Donnelly. Hello. Hello, Leo. Good evening. Good evening. Hello, Seta Long Gagate. Happy May Day. Seta is a YouTube member, as you can see by that little sign next to their name. Kind of cold. It is kind of cold. Hello, Bowel Thoughts. Cool name. Bao is also a YouTube member. Hello, Michael. Oh, I'm going to struggle to pronounce that. Herbatura Kiss. Herbatura Kiss. Hope I did that correctly. Hello, John to Emily. Transition Vlog. Hello, Marching Orders. Happy May Day. Hello, Jaime. Or I've heard Eddie say Jimmy, and I don't think that's right, but I'm not sure. I've always pronounced it in my head at least Jaime. If it's not Jaime, then I'm sorry. Let me know if it's Jaime though, or Jimmy. But hello, comrade. Happy May Day. Hello, Hellboy. Hello, Rachel Graham. Hello, Jacob. Did you see that? No. Ooh, that's gonna be a tough one. That might be something that Noah and Eddie and I and Tom and others will have to discuss and then maybe cover together. Jimmy is right. Okay, okay, okay. Hello, the Hamon M93. That means the ham in Spanish. Uh, hello, hey man, it's me one. Happy Workers' Day. Hello, Terry Conley. Happy May Day, everybody. Hello, Cobalt Steel. Hello, Fired Play. Hello from Costa Rica. Nice. Tell us where you're from, by the way, if you are open to doing so. Hello, Cobra Commander. Welcome, welcome. Uh, yeah, I wish we could have landed the plane there. Yeah, yeah. I went on this very bourgeois adventure that I was invited to for free. To at the time the world's largest cruise. It was like maybe 4 years ago, and we passed by Cuba, and after a few drinks, I was like, man, it's tempting to just swim over there. Hello, Jesse Solis. Solis, happy May Day. Uh, hello, Papa Squats 1289. Happy May Day. Cobra. This is a lot of hellos. Yes, a lot of hellos. I like it. I like a lot of hellos. Today's May Day, International Workers' Day. It's a festival that celebrates the international brotherhood and sisterhood of labor. And the event that it dates back to is the Haymarket riots, which, of course, took place in the U.S., in Chicago. And it was a day where hundreds of thousands of working class people hit the streets to fight for an 8-hour workday, to fight for better working conditions. And in Chicago specifically, there was seven martyrs. I have a picture here. Let me pull it up. There were seven martyrs. They got arrested on a show trial. Seven of them were killed. I believe one of them was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Supposedly, they were connected to a bombing, but most historians agree that the bombing connection was BS. And it was just part of the intensification of the violence of the armed bodies of men, the police against the workers and their struggles to guarantee an 8-hour workday. Hello, Alesha Shaffin. You just became a new member. Thank you. These YouTube members are fundamental for keeping up the Institute financially. And, I can't stress enough how important this is, folks. Thank you. Hello, Cheese Guevara. Great name. Hello from the Midwest and happy May Day. Yeah, so I wanted to show some videos today from different rallies that have been done around the world, different areas of the world like France and Pakistan that hit the streets and protest. Um, by the way, if you want to learn more about the Haymarket riots, the ones that May Day is the sort of the key event that we date May Day back to. These riots took place on May 4th. If you want to learn more, I would highly recommend this book by Philip Foner, one of the most distinguished American communist Marxist historians, who's done amazing work on the history of the American labor movement, amongst other things. He edited the Douglas collection that I have somewhere around here in the back as well. Wonderful historian. I believe he was in the Communist Party. Most of his family was in the Communist Party. Uh, but if you want to learn about the Haymarket Riot, I would definitely recommend his book, A Biography of the Haymarket Riot. It's a wonderful read, a lot to learn from it. Um, it's very sad that although the U.S. is the birth ground of the event that eventually leads to us celebrating May Day, it's of course the riots that take place in 1886. We don't celebrate Workers' Day on May Day. We're one of the only nations in the world that doesn't have it as a federal holiday. We celebrate Labor Day on September 4th. And this is fundamental for dividing our working class and the spirit of working class emancipation from the general struggles of the international working class. Because it would be great if we can all come out on the same day and, and, and rally and look back at our traditions and see how it was that everything that we have that we kind of enjoy, which is getting peeled back more and more as time goes by, but everything that we have that we enjoy hasn't been handed to us by capitalists. It's been fought for through struggles and it's been won. And the times that it's been rolled back has been because we haven't gone all the way. We haven't won political power for the working class. And that should ultimately be the goal in order to guarantee the victories that can be won, but that are easily rolled back if they're won within a society where the capitalists still have political power. Oh, thank you, Alessia Shaffin, so much for the super chat. Longtime follower of your channel. I can finally afford to support y'all financially. Excited to watch this stream live. I usually catch the streams later after the fact. Yeah, I imagine that watching them live is a lot more exciting. I've just recently started watching live streams as well live. And they're so much more exciting when you can comment and you can see your comment put up and people can react to what you're saying in real time. You know, we try to respond to as many comments as we can in the videos after they're up, but it's much more fun doing this in real time. Thank you so much for your donation. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. And that's really, you know, the financial backbone of all of our most important projects, our publishing press, pretty much everything that we're able to do financially in the Institute, trips and, you know, planned brigade members, sending people to various socialist countries. All of that is thanks to the donations that you guys send. So thank you very much. I wanted to actually read a poem from Eduardo Galeano today. I actually saved it. It's a great poem. It's from his book, Open Veins of Latin America. And it says, Chicago is full of factories. There are even factories right in the center of the city, around the world's tallest building. Chicago is full of factories. Chicago is full of workers. Arriving in the Haymarket district, I asked my friends to show me the place where the workers whom the whole world salutes every May 1st were hanged in 1886. It must be around here, they tell me, but nobody knows where. No statue has been erected in memory of the martyrs of Chicago in the city of Chicago. Not a statue, not a monolith, not a bronze plaque, nothing. May 1st is the only truly universal day of all humanity, the only day when all histories and all geographies, all languages and all religions and cultures of the world coincide. But in the United States, May 1st is a day like any other. On that day, people work normally and no one, or almost no one, remembers that the rights of the working class did not spring whole from the ear of a goat or from the hand of God or the boss. After my fruitless exploration of the Haymarket, my friends take me to the largest bookstore in the city, and there, poking around just by accident, I discover an old poster that seemed to be waiting for me, struck among many movie and rock posters. The poster displays an African proverb: until lions have their own historians, histories of the hunt will glorify the hunter. And there you go. What is bourgeois history, if not the history of glorifying the capitalist class, of ignoring, whitewashing, or throwing dirt on the struggles of working people for their emancipation, of democratic struggles for various democratic rights within bourgeois society, the struggle found in the Black Freedom Movement, the struggles found in the women's struggles and other struggles. It's very important, and that's why part of the essence of our institute has been a sort of taking back of the history that we have in this country. It's very easy to assume that just because we've been, the global hegemon for the last 70 years or so, well, definitely for the last 30 years since the overthrow of the Soviet Union, but since we've been the global hegemon, since we were a nation that sustained slavery for a very long time, and then after we freed the slave, they walked back to slavery. There's that famous line from Du Bois's Black Reconstruction: "The slave was freed. They stood in front of the sun, and then they were made to go back to slavery. They walked back to slavery." It's a wonderful poetic line. I just butchered it, but we have a history of slavery, of genocide, of imperialism, of exploitation, of expropriation. A very dark history. But we also have in the underbelly of that history a very, very rich history of struggle, of labor militancy, of the struggle for Black emancipation, for women's emancipation, of socialist and communist struggles. And it's a history that we ought to be proud of. And it's a history that ought to inform our struggles today. It ought to inform the way in which we talk to our working class, and the way in which we pitch the struggle for socialism as something that's not as foreign as anti-communist McCarthyism has led them to believe their whole life. So the topic of history is so incredibly important, and celebrating May Day, even when it's not a federal holiday, remembering the martyrs from May 4th, 1886 in Chicago is fundamental in this task of the struggle for socialism. But there's some things that are achieved when you force our working class to celebrate Workers' Day on September the 4th and not May 1st, as the workers of the world do. It falls in line with what Marx called the secret of the bourgeoisie, which is to divide working people. And they use various means to divide working people, from racism, from sexism, various means. And by having the working class celebrate on a day that no one in the world celebrates, International Workers' Day, they're splitting our working class from the international working class. And that logic of splitting is the way that those in power sustain power. It's an old Latin dictum: divide et impera, divide and rule, or divide and conquer. And in that spirit, I wanted to read an old fable from Aesop's. It's called The Lion and the Bulls. He says, "A lion often prowled about a pasture. He tried without success to lure one or the other of them. A lion often prowled about a pasture where three bulls grazed together. He had tried without success to lure one or the other of them to the edge of the pasture. He had even attempted a direct attack, only to see them form a ring so that from whatever direction he approached, he was met by the horns of one of them. Then a plan began to form in the lion's mind. Secretly, he started spreading evil and slanderous reports of one bull against the other. The three bulls distrustingly began to avoid one another, and each withdrew to a different part of the pasture to graze. Of course, this was exactly what the lion wanted. One by one, they fell upon the bull. He fell upon the bull, and so made easy prey of them all." And that's what the capitalist class does to us. It divides us within our nation, according to various cultural issues. It divides us within our nation according to racial issues. It proliferates racist false consciousness in various parts of the working class. It separates us not just within the nation and fractures the working class within the nation, but it separates our struggles here from the struggles of our brothers and sisters abroad, so that when there's a victory in the farthest corner of the world, a victory of the working class, instead of our working class over here celebrating it as a victory of their class, as a movement in the general global movement towards socialism, a movement that represents emancipation for their class. They don't celebrate it. They often don't even find out if it's going on, and if they do, they're indifferent to it. And that this celebrating of International Workers' Day is having Labor Day on September 4th instead of on May 4th is a symbolic gesture, but it's one that matters and is one that's in the logic of divide and conquer, divide our working class from the international working class, and that weakens us. It weakens our struggle. So, okay, let me go back to the chat. Um, from what I've read, possibly only one of the guys knew the bombers but was not involved. Yeah, it was completely a show trial. It was a fake trial, and everyone knew it was fake, but it was done for the sake of the state showing its muscles and trying to lure the working class back into submission. But obviously, it didn't work, and uh, within some years, the 8-hour workday did pass. As heard some folks today discuss May Day as 1886, 2006. What happened to the communists? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But we're rebuilding, and we have a task that's bequeathed to us by history that we have to fulfill. And insofar as capitalist imperialism continues, there will continue to spring up voices and in every generation that fight for the working class and for the general human emancipation that's embodied in freeing labor from the wrath of capital. I heard nothing about May Day here in the US. It's truly a shame. No one knows the history anymore. Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. Happy May Day, Joseph George. Happy May Day, Pedamillo. May Day is a true American holiday celebrated and recognized by revolutionaries abroad. Right. It's based in an American event. I would say it's an international holiday, um, just because of it's both a national and an international holiday, or at least it should be a national and international holiday. Um, should American Marxists still celebrate Labor Day or just May 1st? Hey, any day that we can take off of work and enjoy barbecuing with our family is something I'm fully in favor of. I'll celebrate any holiday I need to celebrate in order to have a day off and do some drinking with the family and some barbecuing or something. So we could still celebrate Labor Day and also bring up the issue of labor against capital on September 4th. Hello, Brett Burnside. Leo, most Americans don't even celebrate Labor Day, right? Right. They just treat it as a day off instead of thinking about labor and thinking about some of the real victories that have been won by the labor movement in the U.S. But of course, they don't even treat those victories as victories that have been the result of struggles. It feels like it just popped up out of the ether, or it was handed to people once the capitalists came to their consciousness and said, "Oh wow, maybe child labor is not the brightest idea, the most humane idea." It's important to emphasize where it is that the small things that our working class still enjoys, where it is that they came from, and 99.99% of the time, it came from working class struggles, usually led by communists and socialists. And although a lot of the best things have been pulled back, some of the things that our people enjoy the most have been won thanks to struggles of organized working people. I did my first debate today against a low-level conservative and almost ended up debating Prax Ben. The second I got off the call, he popped on. Almost went against a level 10 debate pro with zero prep. Yeah, I'm not too into the debating stuff. I know that Eddie's more open to doing debates than I am, but I think they have their place. If they bring in people and if they engage people who are open to listening to both sides of a debate, if they're able to bring people on board, or at least begin the process of bringing people on board, I think it's definitely something positive. A lot of things started here: chattel slavery, Marxism, fascism. It's just that other nations did these things more after they learned it. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say chattel slavery. That existed before. Marxism was obviously Marx. So you could say that modern um, utopian socialism started here because a lot of the um, utopian communist communities were here. And fascism, yeah. I'd say that what takes place in the aftermath of what Du Bois calls the counter revolution of property in 1876, where the KKK is just allowed to reign freely, lynching black people, terrorizing black communities, and not being held responsible for it. Oftentimes, it was the same people that served in the positions of judicial and political authority that were within the KKK, and funding groups like the KKK. That order can definitely be defined as a form of fascism. I'm writing a research paper on the Chilean coup of 1973. Is there anything you could share about the topic as a Marxist yourself? The Chilean coup of 1873 came on the. It was a coup that overthrew a democratically elected socialist government. Up until that point, the vast majority of projects that had attained political power through a working class party or socialist party had been done through revolution. And so there was this great hope with the victory of Allende that socialism might be able to spread peacefully, and that these transformations could be done somewhat peacefully through coalitions. Allende was a Christian socialist, and he was in coalitions with the labor parties, the communist parties, um, and he began doing amazing things, of course, for the working class. And there's this meeting that he has with Fidel Castro. I believe it's in '71, and Fidel warns him, just because there has been peaceful transfers of power in Chile for the last, 100 or some years, doesn't mean it will continue that way. There's never been a peaceful transfer of power away from the dominant class. So take care of yourself. Make sure to develop like people's militias or something, because they will come for you. And Allende assured Fidel that that wasn't going to be the case. That he was going to be able to protect the revolution. And he mentioned the long tradition that Chile had of respecting the transfers of power. But of course, history proved Fidel correct, and within a year or two of their meeting, you had a horrendous coup that killed tens of thousands of people. It destroyed a whole, perhaps two generations of socialist militants, socialist and communist militants. It brought in immense, it brought in basically fascism, a fascist dictatorship that was ushered in and backed by the U.S. Um, and it was the testing ground for neoliberalism. Milton Friedman gets flied out to Chile, and he basically is the one that develops the Chilean economy after the coup. So that shows the paradox of these neoliberal ideologues. They're always talking about how the interference of the government is bad, and how we should have no government interference, and free markets and laissez-faire. But their whole order is premised on the coercion and state coercion, and enforcing their agenda of liberalization, deregulation, austerity for poor people, privatization, through state coercion, state enforced coercion. Uh, okay, I wanted to show some videos from around the world depicting what's going on today, May Day, various people celebrating. Let me see. Share screen. I'm somewhat of a technological caveman, so excuse the delay. Okay, so this is in Pakistan. Here you have Dr. Taimur Rahman, who's also the general secretary of the Mazdoor Kisan Party, a Marxist-Leninist party in Pakistan. Let me mute myself.
IMF ने मिलके बिल्कुल ही तबाह बर्बाद कर दी है.
Talk about the contrast from like Marxist academics in the West that speak in a language that's so foreign to regular working people, to then leading Marxist academics in Palestine, in Pakistan, excuse me, who are literally with the people involved in the movement, leading the movement, and talking just in front of these great crowds and these great movements. Such a contrast. I don't think it's impossible for us to achieve, that level of interaction between, the organic intellectuals of a movement and the people. It's not impossible. We can do it. We've done it in the past. We've had in our history great people's intellectuals, great organic intellectuals, people like Henry Winston, people like Gus Hall, people like W.E.B. Du Bois. Even though he went, down the route of Ivy Leagues, he still came out of it and was definitely a people's intellectuals, teaching in the Jefferson School of the Communist Party in the early 50s. Um, so we can do it, but it's definitely not being done at the moment. But let me show another. By the way, shout out to one of our comrades from France, a French communist militant. He was the one who sent us a lot of these videos from around the world. Let me just show real quick the struggles in France are still ongoing every Sunday. Let's see. Here's some firefighters. That's the flag of the General Congress of Trade Unions. If you want to learn more about the struggles in France, I would definitely recommend a uh, a stream that Noah did maybe a week ago with Boris Defoe. He's I believe the Secretary of International Relations for the damn, the name is slipping. But for this international body of communists, um, yeah, I can't remember the name, but he's a very important person. He's involved in the trade union movement in France, and he's been seeing these protests develop, all the way back to the yellow vest to what are now definitely more class conscious protests led by the trade movement with the involvement of communist elements within it. So, if you want to learn more about that, tune in to Noah's interview with Boris Defer from maybe a week or two ago. But let's see what else. Here we have the Communist Party of Kenya. They say, today we celebrate May Day. The Communist Party of Kenya takes a clear class position. Our urgent task is to continue to organize the working class as a political class in readiness for a blood confrontation with the property class. The struggles over there have been intensifying. The CPK has been, seeing a lot of political repression. Um, CPK is for class struggle and not class collaboration. Nothing will be surrendered to the workers without a fight. The workers have forced the parasitic employers to have an 8-hour workday, to abandon child labor, etc. The leadership of uh, Francis Atwoli is nothing but a labor desk for employers and governments to ruin the common interests of the working people. Capitalism has failed. Socialism is the answer. Let's build it today. Beautiful words from the CPK. Let's see what else. This is in Germany. That's the flag of the World Federation of Trade Unions. They have a YouTube channel you should all check out. They have interviews and segments with leaders of the working class movement from around the world. Let's see. I should probably find a quicker way to share these. As I mentioned, I'm a technological caveman, but I'll do some research today to see how I can go from page to page quicker. So this one's from Greece. Oh no, the one that we just saw was from Greece. There's one from India now that I want to show. Yeah, let's listen to this one. It's a speech. Pull it up. Boom.
On behalf of CITU, I greet the workers of our country and the working class of the entire world and the toiling masses. Today, May Day is basically about the 8 hours working day. The working class has, through long struggles and sacrifices, even before 1886, had fought for 8 hours working day, and today that hard-won right of the working class is under attack in our country, and not only in our country but across the world. The recent thing we have seen in Karnataka, they have amended the Factories Act and to increase the working hours. Similarly, in Tamil Nadu also, the Factories Act has been amended. The labor codes that the BJP government has passed in 2020, the occupational safety, health, and working conditions, it provides for increasing the working day, and it provides that the state government, the appropriate government, can amend so that the working hours can be increased. So the basically today the attacks on not only the working hours but all the hard-won rights of the working class, whether it is the trade union rights, the right to form organizations, the right to collective actions and collective bargaining, are all under attack. The capitalist class, which today is desperately trying to protect its profits, has no other way to come out of this crisis except by attacking the rights of the working class and the hard won conditions of the working class. So that is what it is trying today. So now across the world, the workers are on struggle. In Europe, in Latin America, in the USA, in Africa, everywhere the working class is under struggles. They are fighting. In Paris, we have seen. In France, we have seen. So in India also, the working class on the struggle path, and not only the workers and the peasants are on struggle path. So these struggles to protect the hard-won rights, to protect the 8-hour working day and the other rights has to be further strengthened, and the working class has to understand the basic reason of this, the capitalist exploitation, to increase the exploitation of the workers, and while fighting to protect their rights, it has also to fight against the capitalist system, which is inherently exploitative and for change in the policies. So, on behalf of CITU, I again extend my warm greetings to the working class of the world. And today is the day we have to take the pledge to fight for our rights and also fight for a change in the policies for pro people, pro worker policies.
Oh, I was muted. I said, there we go. These contradictions that we see are not just taking place in the U.S., they're global. Because capitalism is a global system, and everywhere in the world, the working class is fighting to improve its condition. It's fighting for political power. And it's important to recognize that, the victories that the working class obtains, even the political victories that it is able to obtain by getting into bourgeois parliaments, bourgeois congresses, through their parties, they're always dancing on thin ice, insofar as they continue to exist in a condition where economic and political power remains in the hands of the capitalists, or largely in the hands of the capitalists, or even if political power might be in the hands of the socialists, if the state structures are those that are inherited from the capitalist class, the working class is going to be dancing on thin ice, and the victories that it obtains are always going to be subject to recall. So it's important to remind workers that it's fundamental to fight for reforms, to win reforms. When we win reforms, the struggle of the working class against capital becomes more acute. It becomes, in certain ways, intensified, and it becomes easier to wage the fight against capital with certain reforms in place. However, we must remove the delusion that once we win these, everything is safe. Nothing is safe until at least power over the state power is conquered by the working class. The state is itself transformed from being an instrument of the despotism of capital against labor into a working class state that's used and set up to repress the interests of the capitalist class and of the imperialists. Until those things are done, working people can't fully rest. The struggle has to continue, because as we've seen in our country and in other countries, the victories that are made within the capitalist system are always subject to recall as soon as the working class movement gets weakened. And boy, do we know that it's the capitalist class struggles to weaken it in every which way, whether it's through infiltration, through as what happened here, expelling the communist and socialist elements within the trade unions, which were the ones that had the clear-sighted goal of the ultimate interests of workers in mind, and which are fighting, not just for immediate crumbs, but a long-term fight for the conquest of political power. Those elements were expelled, and it weakened the labor movement, and that's what allowed the labor movement to have the victories that it had won over decades and even a century of struggle to be called back. And none of these victories are safe insofar as we continue to exist within the capitalist system. Shaky camera. Yeah. I have a shaky table and the cameras move. Those Mayday clips are awesome. Thank you, Jack Jones. It was sent to us by a communist friend from France, who sent us a bunch of other clips, but I'll be here quite a while if I show you all of them. Are unions pockets of socialism? That's a really good question. Lenin used to say that unions are training schools of communism. However, the same Lenin, and in the same text, even left-wing communism, was able to show how it was that in certain conditions, unions can play, specifically union leadership, not like the rank and file, but union leadership can play a role that ends up dividing the working class and functioning as what he called, taking it back to a concept that Engels developed, the aristocracy of labor, especially, or most importantly, within the imperialist countries, where what's brought in is from the super exploitation and the extraction of resources from the global south. There are conditions which could be developed wherein the capitalist class bribes off the upper strata of the working class, the leaders of the unions, and has them, in so doing, in doing the bribing, has them act in ways that are according to the interest of the capitalist class, that divide the interest of labor both within the country, that divide the interest of labor internationally. And the best example for that, or one of the best examples for that, was the First World War. It was an imperialist war that the socialists should have acted as they acted in Russia with the Bolsheviks, as they acted here. Actually, the Socialist Party was against the war. Certain elements of the German Socialist Party, the elements that ended up turning into the KPD, the Communist Party of Germany, acted against the war. But what the working class leaders should have done, what the leaders of the various parties associated with the Second International, what they should have done is protested the war. And instead, they endorsed it. They voted for war credits, and they basically sent their working classes to massacre each other for the sake of, the loot that the great powers of the time were trying to fight each other for in the third world and in Africa, more specifically Africa, Asia, more specifically. So that's Trotskyism. That's been the legacy of social democrats, um, who have often traded off the long-term interests and the interests of the international working class for short-term gains for a very small upper strata of labor within the imperialist core. So unions can be pockets of socialism. They often are. They're great training grounds of communism, as Lenin would say. But they could also turn into their opposite. They can turn into a somewhat reactionary force that holds back the unity of labor within the country and internationally. Thank you, Brett Burnside, for the great question. Doug Jaffray says, I wrote a paper on this if you guys would like to read it. Absolutely. Our institute, for those that don't know, we also keep up a website where we publish articles regularly. So if anyone ever wants to write for us, just submit to our editor's email, which can be found in the website. It's midwesternmarks.com. And I believe the editor's email is just editors.midwesternmarks@gmail.com. So send it over, and we have an editorial staff of, I believe, 8 people who are constantly reading articles, reviewing them, and deciding what gets published. Thank you, Sam, for the $5 super chat. Happy International Workers' Day, everyone. I've been loving the Carlos streams, but I sure do miss Eddie. I miss the hell out of Eddie too. I'm there with you, brother. I'm hoping that he'll be back sometime this week. Today's Monday, so he should be home within the next few days, and I'm sure he'll get back to streaming as soon as his energies are there to do so. It's been just from the short conversations I've had with him, somewhat stressful. A whole lot of work, and it's taken a whole lot of fortitude, mental fortitude, to do what he's done for in this tournament to try to classify for the Olympics. So I'm not sure of what the outcome has been. I haven't had a chance to have a proper talk about it with him, but either way, I'm proud of the hard work that he's put in, and of the way that he's represented our class. I think we couldn't have a better representative than Eddie. So thank you, Sam Dixon, again for the super chat. These are what keep the Institute afloat. I was just having this conversation with my mom today. Parenti talks about how the AFL-CIO purged communists from their ranks and the capitalist government crushed them with the revolutionaries gone. Yeah, absolutely, right. It's they shoot themselves in the foot when they do that, and it's because of a very small strata of the upper leadership of labor. They sell out, and the point is not to say, okay, you have these mass unions, let's ignore them, or let's create our own unions. The point is to go in those and show the working class people, the rank and file, how it is that their leaders are selling out the interests of the working class, collaborating with the capitalists, and ultimately setting their struggle back. That's what Lenin urged us to do in left-wing communism, and I think that's still the right thing to do. But yeah, the CIO was basically constructed by the communists, and it won tremendous victories in the labor movement. It was one of the first very substantial unions in the country that was integrated. It wasn't, segregated as other unions like the UAW was segregated for a very long time. And that's just how the labor movement has been since the beginning of the labor movement in the early 19th century. It's been in various ways either indifferent to the struggle for black emancipation or antagonistic to it. during the Civil War, uh, when when blacks were fighting for emancipation and waging this general strike that ultimately won the war. There was parts of the labor movement in the North that were just terrorizing black communities and you know turning they were basically doing race riots and just massacring people, and it was very horrific stuff. So the history of the labor movement is not a nice and pure one. It's one that has had many very stupid contradictions and moments where you're reading back on this and you're like, how stupid can you guys be? Don't you see that your interest is very clearly inciting with black workers and with waging a collective struggle? And what's sad is that that's what the capitalist class has known. That's why it's from the capitalist class that these racist sentiments are proliferated. They're located and then proliferated by the capitalist class, because it goes with the logic of divide et impera, divide and conquer, divide and rule. And in that way, the capitalist class has been for a very long time not just more conscious of its own interests as a class, but therefore also more conscious of what the interests of working people should be, which should be in unifying. And that's what they've always tried to prevent from the time of the Civil War on, really from before. They've tried to prevent working class unity, and I think the conditions today for working class unity are as best as possible, because the main thing that was preventing it was racism and the color line. And it's not that racism and the color line don't exist today, but that you've had big chunks of the country integrated thanks to the class struggle, thanks to the civil rights revolution, which won very real victories that people tend to undermine because it in various things and did it go all the way, but it won tremendous victories, and it shaped the spirit of the nation towards the better. So I do think that while all of these negative things that used to divide workers and make it impossible to wage a collective class struggle at the beginning of the 20th century and throughout the 19th century, while these things are still around, they're not gone. They are the least present than they've ever been in our history, which means that the struggle, a collective working class struggle, the conditions for that are as ripe as possible. And alongside that, you have, the development of this phenomenon, which our editor Noah Krashevik, he calls reproletarianization. This great middle class that came up and developed into a sort of racialized white labor aristocracy. It's completely been torn apart thanks to the last 50 years of neoliberalism and the austerity and cracking down on unions that has meant for working people. And that large middle class has died off, and even bourgeois newspapers recognize that what existed as a middle class in the U.S. no longer exists. And what that destruction of the middle class has produced is the reproletariat. This class of workers that was once part of the working class, but had, because of a whole host of conditions, the pressure of the USSR, victories from the labor movement, had elevated themselves to this position of middle class, of a sort of labor aristocracy. Now that's been destroyed and they're reproletarianized. And there's certain contradictions, ideological contradictions that they have brought into the movement that we have to try to fight to solve. But it nonetheless presents as favorable conditions for fighting for socialism as we've ever had. Okay, sent in the paper, perfect. Very unfortunate to hear what happened to the AFL-CIO. Yeah, the history of our labor movement is a history of moments where you go like, oh fuck, why did you guys have to do that? Why couldn't you just have united? And that's why Marx called. If you look at the writings of Marx on the Irish question, and on the question of British imperialism in Ireland, colonialism in Ireland, and how it was that the British workers related to the Irish workers, which they had this horrendous racism against the Irish workers, not as bad as it was here between the white parts of the working class and the black parts of the working class, but it was still pretty bad. And Marx labeled it very well in one letter, where he said that this racism of the British against the Irish workers just as the racism of the white and the black worker in the Americas is the secret which keeps the bourgeoisie in power. The secret of the ruling class is the way that they're able to pick holes and find spots where they can divide workers amongst each other. So that continues to be true today in various ways. Today, I think perhaps with some cultural issues, which although they might be important or secondary, I think, to the principal contradiction between capital and labor, and are used to divide parts of the working class whose natural interest would be in uniting. Does the Discord have a problem? I have a Discord account, but I haven't used it in a long time. Yeah, from what I hear from Noah, the Discord is a big old mess. I I try to stay away from it um, because I can only endure so many headaches in my life. But I think it's being handled. Last I heard, some of the stuff that was going on there uh, was getting fixed, but I guess it's gone back to shit for some reason. I don't know. Expect it to be dealt with within the next week or so. Uh, The elite keep us fighting a culture war to prevent us from fighting a class war. Right. And some people refer to this as identity politics. I think that's the wrong term. It is class politics. It's just class politics of the ruling class against the massive workers, right? When they keep us distracted with these issues of that are not of substance, what they end up doing is not engaging in a new form of politics. It's it's class politics still. It's just class politics of their class that's used in order to divide our class. A great example to consider when asking whether unions are inherently socialist is police unions. It's the extreme example of unions not being revolutionary. Right, right. That's a tough position because the police, the prison guards, the soldiers, they're all what Lenin would have called armed bodies of the state, right? They are the armed bodies of men that are the direct personified force of coercion on the part of the state that comes out when consent begins to fail. So when consent fails and you have what happened in May 4th, 1886, the Haymarket riots and people, working class people by the hundreds of thousands, they hit the street. That's when, the armed bodies of men come out. That's when coercion, which had been lingering in the background, comes out and smashes dissent. But I do think that they're not inherent. Yeah, you placed it. You described it. They're not inherently socialist. They can be. They can serve as training grounds for communism, as Lenin would have said. Um, let's see. We have a super chat. Thank you, Alessa Shaffin, for another super chat. Relative to this topic, I would love to hear your thoughts on the IWW. I've heard a lot of valid criticisms, but I don't know all the facts. There's some valid criticisms of some of the methods that they engaged with. They could be described as flirting with adventurism, and adventurism is generally something that we want to stay away from. But I think that really the IWW gets founded, I believe, 1904, 1905. I think the Socialist Party is 1903. The IWW might be 1905. But it gets founded and it's somewhat diverse. It has voices, Marxist voices in the U.S. People like Daniel De Leon, who is the leader of the Socialist Labor Party, the first official Marxist party in the U.S. It never grew that big. It was primarily a German immigrant party. The vast majority, I think, it had two or three papers. I believe maybe two of them were in German, so they only had one paper that was in English. But Daniel De Leon was a part of it. You had figures like Debs who were involved. You had figures like James Connolly, famous Irish revolutionary, who was involved in building it. In general, you had a diverse group of people who wanted to wage a struggle as a class and overcome the problem of craft unions. which were unions that were focused on the specific crafts of, more specifically, what was considered skilled labor. And the IWW's big thing was creating one big union, bringing the working class all together into one union. And from the very start, they were against segregation, and they took, I think, largely the correct positions on combating racism within the working class, whereas parts of the Socialist Party, specifically in the South, did not. The Socialist Party sustained segregation. I don't think the IWW did. So they had the right idea, and there's this great pamphlet from Bill Haywood, who was one of its founding members. There's this great pamphlet called Industrial Unionism. It might be Industrial Socialism. I don't remember. I read it maybe 4 years ago now. But it's a short 70-page pamphlet, and it's great at depicting why it is that we have to move away from these craft unions that make us susceptible to having the ruling class pit us against different parts of the working class, and why we should have one big union. And it's very easy to see that the larger the organized working class is, the easier it's going to be not just to wage the struggle for political power, but even to wage the struggle for reforms, right? The union makes us strong, right? And the larger the union is, the stronger we end up being. So I think the IWW definitely played a very positive role when it was founded. It was a progressive institution. It ended up going the route of anarchism and what in the Marxist-Leninist tradition we would call ultra-leftism and adventurism at times, but I think it's still a largely positive force. Thank you, Mauricio. He says, Yo, Carlos, long supporter. Thank you for spreading your knowledge in an understandable manner. Solidarity. Thank you, Mauricio. I'm new to these loan streams, but I'm hoping to be able to do 3 or 4 a week consistently from now on. And I was thinking about maybe doing 1 or 2 of them, just like AMA streams, where I just interact with y'all, answer your questions, and just hang out for an hour or two. Jaime says, Jimmy. Uh, Jimmy says AFL CIO were one of the forces working against the strikers in the book I'm writing. They also supported literacy tests for immigrant workers. That's awesome. Yeah. Jimmy's writing this book, if I remember correctly, about a labor movement by his area in New York. And it's being edited by one of our wonderful editors. He's a professional historian, Alex Zambito. So, by the way, update me on how that's going, Jimmy. And if you need any help uh, with getting access to academic papers behind paywalls, let me know, and I can get those for you, free of charge, of course. Um, what specific problems were there in Discord? I don't know. I think that some of the people that were moderating were just like ban friendly, and were just banning all sorts of people, which some of them maybe deserved it, others maybe not so much. We like to foster, especially in those spaces, a space of dialogue, and we very much like to emphasize unity. We think that's extremely important. Unity in our class, and also unity in terms of being able to work with people who, although we might have disagreements with them in various areas, we should be able to unite on the common things that we share. And hopefully, I think that if you follow our project and you align your thinking with the dialectical materialist worldview, which just means if you become a consistent Marxist in outlook, you should be able to come to either the same or very similar conclusions in your analysis of like the condition in the U.S. or geopolitics, or whatever it is. So we're hoping at least, that some of these contradictions that parts of our audience might have with other parts are grown out of as Marxist education, as they continue to develop the Marxist worldview, which is something that I think is going to be facilitated by Noah Krashevik's class, Marxism 101. It's going to be like a college setting, type of thing, except without the some of the snobbiness that you might have in a college setting. But we're hoping to make it anywhere from a 2 to 3 hour weekly class that people will sign up for ahead of time, and it's going to run for like 4 months, so 12 weeks. And we really hope that people will end up coming out of it not just with a better understanding of Marxism, but also with a better understanding of like the sort of character that you should be carrying yourself with when you're a communist, and also just being able to develop practical skills such as speaking in public about these topics, or doing things like being able to write papers and stuff. Because it'll definitely help the institute if we can develop more folks that are willing to collaborate in the form of videos and articles and all such things. Part of the reason there is a lack of class consciousness in the US is the lack of unions capable of taking actions. Unions are a school of class struggle. We need to rebuild a labor movement, create a newspaper or media that can be a rallying place for socialists to agitate on, and we need to build the organization that can pull all organs of class struggle together for revolutionary action. Absolutely, and I would add along with that not just unions, but a strong communist party, where the most advanced segments of that union can be in and develop themselves theoretically, and just be devoted of keeping the long term vision of where it is that the working class movement ought to go, keeping that vision in sight, letting people know that fighting for reforms are good, but reformism is itself a big mistake. Everything that we ultimately want can only be secured by conquering power. And that's something that often even the most militant of labor unions lose sight of. So that's why I think that developing a strong communist party is also conjoined with developing a labor movement, a part of that. But hopefully, out of the labor movement, a strong communist party develops, or the one that exists ends up being rebuilt along those lines. I do want to say that there was just a brigade to Cuba, of which Chris Smalls, the person that formed the Amazon Labor Union and that won the union for Amazon workers in Staten Island, I believe. He was just in Cuba, and he met with President Diaz Canel, and he's been doing a lot of great work promoting the cause of lifting the blockade and learning about Cuba. And I am extremely happy to see that, because I think he represents a new strain of labor that's also coming up around the same time as the UAW and the Teamsters have both elected somewhat radical labor militant leaders as presidents. So I see the labor movement rebuilding itself. Just 2 months ago, we had the Railroad Workers United. Someone from them, from their group, reached out to us and asked us to give them an endorsement for their call for the nationalization of rail. So that's that'd be fucking huge. So I see a lot of stuff to be optimistic about within the labor movement. And if Chris Smalls is educating himself about socialism and hanging out with the sort of groups that went on this brigade to Cuba and learning about socialism and the importance of fighting, leading the working class struggle all the way to to the grab of political power, the establishment of a socialist state, it's going to be it's going to be pretty cool to see what he ends up developing into and the sort of groups that he's able to lead in the future, because that's been, as we've been talking about, one of the worst problems within our labor movement. It has often developed into a labor aristocracy of sorts. It promoted, by the way, someone mentioned earlier, Chile and the coup against Allende in '73. Part of the people that promoted that, unfortunately, was some of the leading trade unions in the U.S., the AFL-CIO. There's this paper by a comrade of ours, Rodrigo. Um, Damn, I can't remember his last name, but we published it on our website, and it talked about the role that the unions played in the coup against Allende. And it's very sad, but it has been true that the labor movement has generally sided with imperialism. So if we can develop a new strain of labor militancy headed perhaps by Chris Smalls, that's pro actually existing socialism and anti-imperialist, that would be just awesome. I don't know what else to say. It would be exactly what we need, and he's a very charismatic person that I think can develop into a great labor leader. So, uh, in Latin America, both libertarian leaders and feminist movements are funded by some interest groups. One of them is one of them one of them is Foundation Atlas. Yeah, I don't doubt it. It's very clear to anyone who can see two fingers in front of their face that we're living in a moribund system that is well beyond its better days, and there's no way to come out and defend it directly. Um, there's there's just no way. The vast majority of people realize that the sort of direct apologetics that groups like PragerU do, they realize it's bullshit. Like, just look at the PragerU Facebook. Look at the reactions to their videos. People see that it's a fucking joke. People see that it's a joke. So how is it that you end up, you know, solidifying hegemony, that you end up having people accept the ideas of the ruling order today, when most people realize that the ruling order doesn't work for them and that it's crumbling? You do it through what Lukács called indirect apologetics, through these groups that present themselves as radical, that present themselves as counter hegemonic, but they're actually what I've called in the past controlled counter hegemonic forces that are led by people that function as radical recuperators, which is a concept from Gabriel Rockhill, and they're radical recuperators because they present themselves as radical. They get the attention of people that are being radicalized by the existing moment and the destitute condition in which they live, but they recuperate all of that energy and they suck it into the sphere of pro-capitalist imperialism, which doesn't substantially threaten the dominant order. So I could see movements like that functioning in that way in Latin America and here and in different parts of the world. Love Big Bill. Yes, we had developed a part of our institute called the Marks of Capital, because Big Bill Haywood has this famous phrase that he says, "I've never read Marx's Capital, but I've got the marks of capital all over my body." Just an incredible phrase. If we once we uh, once we achieve socialism, I can see that being like a great line from like a socialist rapper or something. You know, I've never read Marx's Capital, but I got the marks of capital all over my body. But yeah, we had the Marks of Capital series where people would send us their letters, letting us know how it was that they were struggling in their everyday life, thanks to their employers, their landlords, etc. And we would read those and then interact with the people who sent the letters in. It was something that the Bolsheviks did with their newspaper, and it gained them quite a bit of traction. So hopefully we can go back to doing that. Um, We are not ready for class struggle victory of the lower classes, and let me tell you why. Okay, that. uh, hey, where? Welcome. They be talking shit about the Soviet Union sometimes. Yeah, yeah, that seems to be the common of most radicalism in the U.S. Yeah, the anarchist adventurous stuff is mostly what I was curious about. Thank you for your response. Yeah, of course, anytime. Um, uh, I hope you don't have a Valshite infestation on like some Discord groups. They are the worst. Yeah, I've seen maybe like two or three videos from Vosh, and he just seems like a slimy little guy. So I'm not interested. I don't know how Eddie's going to be able to endure that debate. That just sounds miserable. Uh, Seems like the Writers Guild of America has called their first strike since 2007. Just saw it on the news. Oh wow, I gotta check that out. Maybe we can add it to the next segment. Um, probably should join the class. I think we're going to limit the class to 25 people, just because we want it to be small enough so that everyone has a chance to interact in real time. And we're hoping to have like a contract of sorts, because those classes will be live streamed. And if people don't want to like be recorded or something, we want them to know ahead of time that we plan on recording those classes live stream. So everyone will be able to see them, but the people that will be able to directly interact with Noah and with whoever comes in to teach a specific class, because that's something that we plan on doing, bringing in people that are specialists on the area where the class will be covering that day. And then they give like a 30-minute lecture, answer questions for 30 minutes, and then the other hour or two is like Noah and the class breaking down what was talked about. It's honestly something that like hasn't been done in decades. Like it used to be done by the Communist Party with the Jefferson School and the Lenin School, which were both like funded by the USSR and the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and it developed just terrific working class minds, organic intellectuals, people like Henry Winston. Because imagine you had thinkers like W.B. Du Bois, who's perhaps the most brilliant mind of American history, teaching in the Jefferson School. So we haven't had that in a very long time. So we hope that these classes can be like the start of something like that. Uh, Hey, Carlos, I love that Midwestern Marx started an education class about Marxism Leninism, and we should strive to create a communal revolutionary gym where comrades and trade unionists could get jacked together. That would be awesome, man. It is something that we have talked about in the past. We're hoping to have brick and mortar locations up, hopefully within the next year or two, and I can definitely see like some martial arts communist training gyms popping up in Eddie's town. He's in Dubuque, Iowa, by the way. It's a fucking beautiful little town right off the Mississippi, right next to Wisconsin and Illinois. And the main industry there was the automobile industry, and I think most people are employed through John Deere. So when the John Deere strikes occurred, we donated to the strikes. We went out there and we brought them pizza, and we participated in the strikes with the John Deere workers. But it's a wonderful town that has a lot of potential. I think it's a working class town, and maybe we can get some communist gyms up there. I heard some bad things about the recent UAW elections. Claims that it was only attended by less than 10% of the union members, and that this was intentional by the union leadership, but I cannot verify this. Yeah, I haven't heard much about it, but I wouldn't be surprised, simply because, we have our union membership rate in the US is very, very low. But that's not the only problem. Even within that very low percentage, it's a very small number of people that end up being active union members. And a lot of our friends that are in the labor movement and in rail and these various industries that are fundamental for the economy, that are in what we call the pressure points of capital, that's something that they tell us. They tell us that it's sometimes even worse than what it appears to be, because it's not just low union rates, but it's low union participation, and a whole lot of people that are just paying their dues but just not being a part of the collective decision making. And sometimes it's leadership that has alienated the rank and file to the point of that being the case. But I think that's something that's changeable, but it's I think it's something that perhaps might be changing now. We've had a lot of developments within the labor movement that look very exciting. And things are only going to get worse from here on out in terms of the material conditions. So in Marxism, we have this idea that what the conditions for the possibility of a social revolution, of a revolutionary situation, are objective and subjective. And I think that it is very clear that the objective revolutionary conditions are here. All we're missing is really the subjective revolutionary conditions, the consciousness of the people, and the revolutionary organizations through which they can wage a struggle. And I talk about this in my last chapter of The Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism, if you want to learn more about that. Chris Small says the truth. Absolutely. Mm-mm-mm. Thank you, Ross. Thank you so much. Happy May Day. It's actually the second here in Ireland because we're a day ahead. Nice. So you guys celebrated it yesterday, but thank you so much for the 20 euros. Is that I always shit on Eddie for not knowing the symbols, but I don't think I know many of them either. Thank you. I can't find any evidence that Bill Haywood actually said that quote. He surely had to have read Marx as he was a member of the Socialist Party and a delegate of the Second International. Good sentiment, though. Yeah, that seems like it's one of those where it's been attributed to him for a century, and people continue to do so. I haven't found it in any writing, and like when I cite it from like history books that have referenced it. And I don't think I've done the work of like looking at their reference if they have a specific article, but it's been reputable sources, people like Philip Foner and stuff who've cited it. So Vosh is just gonna lie and push buttons until Eddie says Stalin. Yeah. And then the audience that follows blindly the slime ball Voosh is just gonna have their brains melted when Eddie is forced to defend Stalin. I just bought a copy. Awesome. Let me know what you think. I tried to keep it short so that people can get through it in a reading or two, in a sitting or two, I mean. It's about 100 pages, maybe 104. But yeah, let me know what you think. All right, folks. Well, it is getting a bit late. It's 11 something here, and I have to get to bed. I'm somewhat of an old man now. Ever since I've had the baby, I have a 6 month old, by the way. But ever since I've had the baby, I've gone from being the sort of person that can ride up to 2, 3 a.m. in the morning to a Noah. I've turned into a Noah, someone who has to go to sleep early. And I've been going to sleep earlier and earlier. At first it was 1, then it was 12, and now by 11, I'm like half dead. So thank you so very much for hanging out with me on International Workers' Day, on May Day. And I hope you all have a good rest of your night. And we'll see you in next stream, hopefully tomorrow, maybe the day after. But either way, thank you for being here with me, and take care.
economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.